Hello, this is Jim Feist in Las Vegas, and I'm joined again by the red hot Hank Goldberg from Florida. I know the weather isn't that hot down there, Hank, but last night in college hoops, you were 4-0 again. You know, you had a great season in the Review Journal here in Las Vegas. I think you hit 63%. And in the contest at the Westgate, you had a fantastic year. There were points where you were almost at 70%. Then you hit a couple of weeks where you didn't. But at the top of the list, you were always in the top 100 out of 2,800 people. And at times, you were only 4 or 5 games out of first place. So you had a remarkable year. It continues with college basketball. And you did very well in the bowls as well. You had a great year, Hank. I know you've been around.
I should have stayed away from the Thursday games in the contest. I did not do well with those a couple of times, and that's what the difference was between the contest and what I did in the Review Journal, where I didn't have to pick those games until Saturday morning. So, I had later information that really helped me in that contest.
You know, there's Thursday games. There's a lot of talk about those Thursday games. You can get these teams that are playing on 3 days rest. They play on Sunday and then they play on Thursday, and that one team has to travel. Maybe both teams have to travel if the home team was actually away the previous week. It's kind of it's fair for everybody in all the teams, but I don't think the consistency and formfulness of those teams is as good as it is when they get a full week's rest, and that probably disrupted your performance on Thursday.
Well, wasn't that many difference in games? 3 or 4, and then that was the difference between me making money and not making money in the contest. So
I've said this before. I'll say this again. The contest is great. $1,500. You pick 5 games per week. Everybody has the same chance to win. There's no politics involved. It is what it is. It's very fair. The problem with it is, in my opinion, and I play a lot of big entry poker tournaments, and poker tournaments always pay the top 10% of the field. So if there's 3,000 people in the field, the top 300 people are going to get some money back. Now that's really good because it flows the money to more people. So if you put up $5,000 or $10,000, you get a chance to get your money back and a little profit if you're down at the lower end of it. Of course, the top places, the top 3 or 4 people that get most of the cash. But in the contest at the Westgate years ago, which was called the Hilton back in the day, they only got 100 people or 150 people or 200 people, and they paid 20 people. Well, that was closer to what should be reality in these contests. This year, they got like 27 or 2,800 people, and they paid the top 50 places, which is why I chose not to enter. And the reason for that is they paid less than 3% of the field, which just doesn't make sense to me. When you have that many people, they're totally out of it. And when you're only going to pay top 50 places on that many people. Now, next year, if they get, let's say they get 4,000 people, and you're going to pay the top 50% or 50 places, when it should be the top 400 places, in my opinion. So until they change that, and I know they did make an adjustment. It's a great contest. I'm not criticizing the contest itself. It's great. And they run it great, and the staff over there does a remarkable job. But they really need to widen the payoffs to make it more fair for the people who have a good season, but not the great season that wins all the money, at least to get some of their money back and maybe slightly get a profit. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. That's the way I look at it. Anyway, we got 4 wild card games this weekend, Hank, and we should discuss them.
Well, I guess the churn's a lot greater in poker than it is in that tournament where it's a one-time buy-in and the money is stable. That's it. Anyway, Yeah, this weekend is pretty interesting. I see where the biggest movement in the line right now over the last couple of days is in the Atlanta game at Los Angeles, where the number has dropped to 5.5 and it's going down. More and more money is showing up for the Falcons. Logic tells me, I was about to take Atlanta in that game because I think their defense has been playing pretty well. And I was concerned about the Rams kicking game. But the lower that game goes, the more I like the other side. Atlanta's got injury problems in their offensive line. The left guard is out. Alex Mack is hurt at the center. I don't know how much he's going to be able to play. I think the guys, the key players on offense, their running back and Jones is playing a little bit hurt. Running back has got all of a sudden fumbleitis, 4 fumbles in the last 4 weeks. And it makes me think that, and you got the communication problems between the quarterback. I talked to a guy yesterday who told me that he's a numbers guy, and that national numbers business that Chris Collinsworth uses, among other people, likes the Atlanta a lot in this game. But they go strictly by numbers. And, Bob Baffert told me one time when he handicapped the handicappers in racing, he said, what this separates me from the others is that I'm a trip handicapper, and I go by what I see in races. I watched every Atlanta game, and I don't care what the numbers show. Matt Ryan is not on his game. He's throwing, he's wild. He's like a pitcher who's lost his control. He does not find his receivers who are open downfield. He doesn't, not even on the swing passes and screens. He's inaccurate in those areas too. And that doesn't show up in the numbers evaluation. And that's why I'm a little bit against Atlanta in this game. I think he's the key, and he hasn't been right. And I think some of it, and you've hit on this several times, is because he doesn't, the offense they're running may not be suitable for him since they made the switch in offensive coordinators.
100% agree. First of all, a couple of questions. You mentioned Chris Collinsworth, who I really enjoy listening to. What numbers is he looking at?
I forget the name of the company. It's a national company that a lot of people subscribe to. That bases everything on computers.
That might be, maybe it's Football Outsiders or something like that.
Yeah.
That's
what it is.
And the reason I bring that up is I've used them too. They're very good. The one thing about this, and people don't talk about this very much, strength of schedule. A lot of people refer to it as SOS. Atlanta played in a very difficult division. I mean, the teams in that division are pretty tough. And matter of fact, we have 3 of them still playing. Carolina, New Orleans, and Atlanta. That division is really rough. And so they have the 4th toughest strength of schedule number, which is very high. Now, even though, Sarkisian is there and Ryan isn't playing that well, and there's been so many games that they haven't even scored 21 or 24 points, which is unusual for a team that has, yards per play is a measurement a lot of people look at. And another measurement is strength of schedule. Well, the numbers that Atlanta has are remarkable. Compared to the Rams schedule was not that strong. And, I mean, this is a team that didn't play great football at home. They had a losing record at home. They lost to Philly at home. They lost to Seattle at home. And they're a young team with a young coach and a young quarterback, and they don't have playoff experience. But the other side of it is Atlanta And I'm not trying to make a case for Atlanta here. I'm just bringing out points. And Atlanta was the Super Bowl team that led by 25 points against New England last year and blew it. They have not had a great year in many ways. It wasn't nearly as good as it was the previous year. But they still made the playoffs, and they're still there, and they basically have the same talent, very similar talent, as they had a year ago. So they're a very dangerous team, and they're a very tough out. So I can understand when you look at the numbers, and I'm glad I brought up Football Outsiders. I recommend people going there if they want to. It's highly technical. It's highly number oriented. Not everybody likes that, but they are really good at what they do. So that's a little free plug for them. I hope they appreciate it. And another thing, when you look at this game, when you look at Atlanta and the Rams, and you think mentally, you think these are two high-scoring teams. Well, Atlanta didn't score. They scored a little bit more than half of what they scored a year ago. The number opened 49. It's down to 48. So there's been some under money. And when you see under money, you usually start to see, unless there's a real imbalance in the talent, you start to see it a little bit harder to cover a spread as a favorite when there's less points projected to be scored. Now, that's not such a big thing, but when you look at the fact that this could have been 6.5 and maybe gone to 7, which it actually did, by the way, it did go up to 7. There were 7s popping up, and people were grabbing them as soon as they hit the boards, both in Las Vegas and around the world and the offshores. So the numbers, I understand. And Atlanta is dangerous. But your point is, at some point in time, the Rams at home start to look like they have value. But I don't know if it's at the 5.5 and 6 that we're looking at now, or is it going to continue to go down and you might be able to lay maybe 3.5 or 4. So this is what I do all day is I monitor not only sports sites but market sites, futures, and all kinds of stocks, and this is what I do all day. But so I'll be watching that. There might be value on the Rams, but it might not be right now.
Well, it is what it is right now, and I don't think it's going to go down much lower. The Rams right now are playing very well. The game they lost to Seattle at home, they didn't give the ball to Burley, and the coach made a lot of mistakes. The only thing that bothers me about the Rams is their kicking game. Their kicker is out, and he's the best kicker in the league, and they're going to miss that. But they're still the top scoring team in the league. And, one area where they have a little bit of an edge is, except for the one defensive back, I think they've got some advantages in the passing game. So, and the other thing is, the Rams' defense is good. And they're going to have an edge over that offensive line, which is really nicked up. I mean, that left guard is a Pro Bowler, and their center is a key guy. And if the center can't go 100%, that's a big problem for him. Center to quarterback is a big issue. And so that has nothing to do with numbers.
And the left guard and left tackle are definitely big issues as well, especially for a right-handed quarterback that usually has his back to that position when he drops back. So it is huge. It is huge. And Atlanta, the Rams are the correct favorite. They do have home court. Atlanta's playing on a shorter week, have to travel 3,000 miles to play them. Definitely, the Rams are the favorite. They should be the favorite. But when you start to see an opening at 4.5 goes up to 7 and starts to back off again, it almost looks like people are playing both sides of the game, trying to set themselves up for a middle because there's been so much activity that way. This Saturday also we have another game, Tennessee at Kansas City. Marcus Mariota is the only quarterback in the playoffs that has thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. That's kind of unusual for a playoff team to have that kind of staff.
All of those interceptions came on the road, the bulk of them. I think he had 15 picks, and then 13 or 14, I think, were on the road. He's only had 3 touchdown passes on the road. They've got only one healthy running back, and that's Henry. The other one is hurt. He won't play. And in the Review Journal story that they did on me today, the headline was Kansas City was the only favorite that I would put a lot of money on. Basically, I see this game as a rout. It's, Kansas City's playing so well right now. Since mid-October, they're only giving up 16 points a game at home. And last week their defense gave up points to Denver, but remember, he benched a lot of guys, and they still won that game. But Alex Smith is playing well. He doesn't turn the ball over, except for one game he had a bad game where he did throw some picks. They had a little bit of a slump in the middle of the year. He's got speed on the flanks. He's got a running back who ran for 1,240 yards. He probably would have won the rushing title if they'd have played him last week, but they kept him out. And I just don't think that Tennessee can keep up with him. And that coach in Tennessee, if they don't show up, he won't be showing up next year.
Well, I'm not a big fan of the Tennessee coach anyway, and
I like him a lot. He worked in Miami for a couple of years, and when he was here, he and I really got along. I liked him very much. I thought he did a great job as an offensive coordinator wherever he's been, but he's had difficulties this year.
Well, a lot of times, these great defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators step up to being a head coach, and it just doesn't work. It does in some cases, in other cases it does not. And the one thing about Kansas City is they have not done very well in the past. Now, I'm not much of a history buff when it comes to handicapping. I kind of look at what I see in front of me now. I'm not going to go back 10 or 15 years and say, well, this happened over the last 10 years. It sounds good, but it really doesn't make, when all the players and all the coaches are different, I have to look at the current stuff. The Kansas City had, if you're looking at history, they've had a bad time playing at home in the playoffs. And Andy Reid has always been pretty conservative. And many times he's been guilty of playing not to lose, which I personally don't like, because then you'll allow the other team to just play aggressively, and many times they'll backdoor cover you or come back and win the game when they should not have had the opportunity to do so. But a couple weeks ago, Andy Reid turned over the play calling to Nagy, and they have been more aggressive going down the field, where Alex Smith has always been, accused of being conservative, game manager, etc. But when you look at Alex Smith's talents, he has a big arm, he's accurate, he's got great mobility, he can run well. He's been a very, very good quarterback for a long time. 67% completions this year. He's like 25-5 touchdowns to interceptions. That kind of range. I'm not sure exactly those numbers, but if they're opening it up and not playing not to lose but to win and being aggressive about it, they become a very dangerous football team. There have been 2 streaks this year. At the beginning of the year, when they were 5-0, everybody was saying this is the best team in football. Then they went 1-6, and now they end up a 4-0 streak. So, yeah, Tennessee is probably the one team that you could say, yeah, they're kind of ugly to be in the playoffs. So that's probably why you're looking at 8.5s and 9s. But there has been some buyback too. When it hits that 9, it starts to starts to disappear, money does come in on them.
Yeah, well, they can have it. This is a Kansas City team when it's at its best. They went into New England and beat the Patriots. You know, that's the kind of talent they have. They got speed on the flanks. They got maybe the second best tight end in the business behind Gronk. Kelsey's really good. As long as he keeps his head on, doesn't get ticked off during the course of the game. And that tight end, you fantasy players out there, get on him because the Tennessee safeties aren't going to have an answer for him.
That's a good point. We've got a couple Sunday games. We want to touch on them, Hank. We've got the Buffalo-Jacksonville game, and of course, you got the big injury to Buffalo. What's his status, McCoy?
He says he can play. He did stretching exercises yesterday, and he's just worried about cutting, of course, which is a big thing for his game. But I think they're going to shoot him up, and it wouldn't surprise me if he takes the field tomorrow. And without him, I don't know how much of a chance they have. But I'll tell you something about Buffalo. Their defense is really good, and they are very good in the turnover area in terms of taking the ball away. And they're going up against a quarterback who could be a turnover machine in Bortles. The running back is, I don't know how strong he is, if he can give him a full game or not, but Irie is a decent runner too. But Jacksonville offensively is missing their top two receivers. That's a problem offensively. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. And I think the number's high. And I'll tell you something. I except for the Peterman experiment, if it wasn't for that, they wouldn't have backed in. Because I think the quarterback is playing pretty well now. And, he's got a couple of decent receivers. And I just think that I know Jacksonville, has 59 sacks this year, but this quarterback is very mobile, and he could present a problem for their pass rush. So, and you know what? The weather's going to be cold up there in Jacksonville. It's going to be more Buffalo weather than it is Jacksonville weather, and I don't like the way Jacksonville played the last couple of weeks coming into this tournament. So I'm going to take a shot. I think with the, I'm not going to go crazy with it. I wouldn't bet a lot of money on this game, but what I do put up, I'm taking the number.
I don't blame you. The total in this game's 39. That's the lowest total of the 4 games. And when you see a 39 total in a 9-point spread, you're basically saying, like, okay, the favorite's going to win it 20-7, or some crazy number like that. And I don't know, Jacksonville, life is like a box of chocolates from the Forrest Gump movie, and life with Bortles is like that. You never know what you're going to get with him. Most of his great stats come from when they're way ahead at the end, or they're way behind. And it's just when there's a lot of pressure, he has had a tendency to crack. So I can understand your point there. How about this Carolina-New Orleans game? The third time these two teams have met this year. New Orleans won the first 2. The game is 6.5 and 7 now. Open 5.5. Totals come down from 48.5 to 47.5. So they've taken some under money and favorite money in this game. Now, of course, you got Cam Newton, who sometimes looks absolutely awful, especially when he throws those high balls. He just overthrows receivers a lot. But then there's times when he looks like Superman. So what are you going to get from him? I don't know. Drew Brees is more consistent. They got the running game with Ingram and Kamara, and that's a pretty devastating duo. They've played very well this year. Their defense has fallen off a little bit lately because of injuries. They've lost some key people on the defensive side of the ball. and I think it's hurt their defense a little bit. I wasn't happy with the way they looked against Tampa, because I think Tampa converted like 12 out of 13 third down conversions, which was not very good. I know they didn't need the game, but they did play hard. They weren't trying to give it up, that's for sure. So the defensive injuries bother me for the Saints. Otherwise, I think the Saints would make it 3-0 this year against Carolina, but it's a concern. I favor the Saints, but I'm concerned about that those defensive injuries.
Well, there's 5 starters from the beginning of the season who were on injury reserve for the Saints defense, and they weren't that deep, but they have those 2 young corners who are going to play. You've got very similar offenses between Tampa Bay and what Carolina throws out there, in that you got the quarterback, got some strong arm, and you don't know what you're going to get with him. He's another box of chocolates. So, but I tell you, you've got also a lack of a strong running game. Although McCaffrey can get some yardage at times. They don't hesitate to give him the ball and let him try the middle. Last week, when watching them, the tight end, who's a real leader on the team, seemed to get very ticked off at Cam during the course of the game. And he, because he was getting open and he wasn't getting the ball, and Cam was throwing it behind him. Every catch had to be a circus catch. And, Olsen was not a happy guy during the course of that game. And, they're a single-dimensional team, basically, because they don't have the running back that other teams have that you can give the ball to. The running game, basically, is Cam. He's their top rusher. Nobody comes close to him with the runs from scrimmage. And Cam sometimes tends to hold the ball too long. And, that game last week bothered me with New Orleans. I'll tell you what else bothers me with New Orleans. Brees has not made good decisions in the red zone this year. He's been averaging like a couple of touchdowns a game for the most part. And I know they've won 7 games, their last 7 games at home. But there's something that's just not clicking when they get the ball inside the 20 in terms of their play selection. And the Carolina defense is good. I spent the afternoon with Don Shula yesterday, and I asked him if he had talked to Mike, who's the offensive coordinator with Carolina. And they usually do speak during the week, but he hadn't heard from them so far. So they're burning the midnight oil, trying to come up with ways that they can make things easier for Cam. And we'll see what happens. But, teams, by the way, I think I said this the other day, but teams that play for the third time, the teams that have won the first 2 games against the other, are 20-7. That's a historical trend. But, in this particular case, I think 7 points might be a lot. And I think this could be a real competitive game. And by the way, Carolina's got a pretty good kicking game too, and their special teams are good. So we'll see what happens. But who could be a key guy in this game? Ginn.
Oh yeah, he definitely can break games open if you get